Welcome everybody back down to Ice Level. As always, I'm your host, James Blennau. I am graciously here with you from my college dorm room, as you might notice from the change of scenery. But today, it's not about one college, it's about all the colleges across the eastern half of the United States, as this is going to be your Eastern set of conferences 2024-25 season preview. That's the ECAC Atlantic and Hockey East conferences. So without further ado, let's get right into the action.
Avengers!
Assemble.
I'm here with CHN ECAC writer Cam Levasseur. Cam, how you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Not so bad. Let's get right into this little video that we're running here. Who do you think are going to be the standout players in the ECAC this year? You know, there's been a lot of turnover.
Yeah, there has been a lot of turnover, but I think you see some of those guys who are maybe juniors going to seniors or sophomores going to juniors take a big step this year. I think Dalton Bancroft for Cornell is going to be one of those guys. He has had plenty of production in the last couple of years, and I think in a year that Cornell is really poised to take maybe a big jump and maybe even make the Frozen Four, I think he's going to be their best player. And then I think when you look at a team like Dartmouth, which also took a big step next year, I think Luke Hames is going to be that guy for them. He had, I believe, 30-something points last year. He's one of the top scorers in the ECAC. I think he takes another jump this year. Defensively, I think you look at a guy like John Prokop for Union. He was All-American 2 years ago. I think he's going to have similar status like that this year. He's one of the best puck movers in the league, and I think he's going to really shine for them.
All right, and then let's go on to the dark horse teams. You know, this conference is always very competitive, especially at the middle of the ranks. You know, besides your Quinnipiacs, your Harvards, your Cornells. Who would you say could be somebody that could go up in Lake Placid and steal the Whitelaw this year?
There's a couple for me. I think one of them is Union. I like a lot of the core pieces they have in that team. Obviously, they lost a lot in the offseason, but I like where they're at. They're on their third year under Josh Haig. I like Nate Hanley. I think he's going to take a big jump this year. Obviously, I talked about John Prokop a minute ago. I think him and Colin Ferguson are a very good top pairing for them. For me, it's just a little bit of a feeling more than anything. I think this team is a team that could make the jump and steal that fourth spot in Lake Placid. And then I think the other one is Princeton. Obviously, they replaced their head coach this offseason. They brought in Ben Sire from Cornell. He's a great defensive coach, and that's exactly what this team needs. They were, I think, 6th in the nation in goals given up last year. I think he's going to take them to another level, and they score enough goals, but I think that defensive prowess is going to help them even out, and I think they could take a pretty big jump in the standings.
And then in terms of the teams at the top, and, you know, there's always some sort of surprise, how many bids do you think this conference is going to send to the NCAA tournament, and who do you think is going to go?
I think at the top, Cornell and Quinnipiac, they're pretty much locks. I don't see either of them not getting in, but from there, it's a bit of a toss-up. I think Dartmouth is my number 3 team in the league this year. I think they have a really good chance of getting a bid, I think it's going to be tough for them given their non-conference schedule to get in on that, but if they see success against they're playing like BC, and they'll probably have Providence later in the year, I think if they win those games, they have a decent chance to get in like that 14th spot in pairwise. But other than that, they'd have to win the conference to get out. So if that happens, I think Dartmouth would have a real shot there. And then I think it is just going to be 2 or 3 bids. I don't really see a 4th team getting in there.
Yeah, I mean, Reed Cashman's really been building that program up in New Hampshire, but moving on from that, what are your predictions to how the conference is going to stand? You know, there's a ton of teams in this one compared to conferences in the interviews that I've done for some of the others, like the Big Ten and the CCHA. How do you think it's going to shape up?
Yeah, I think we might see a shakeup, at least in the regular season at the top of the standings. I think it's going to be Cornell, Quinnipiac 1-2. I think Cornell takes the Cleary this year, and maybe that's what Quinnipiac needs to finally get another Whitelaw, but we'll see there. And then I have Dartmouth at 3. I have 4 through 9 is a bit of a toss-up, but I have Union at 4. I have Colgate at 5, Harvard at 6, Princeton at 7. Obviously, they could jump depending on what happens this year. Clarkson at 8, St. Lawrence at 9, and then 10 through 12 is RPI, Brown, and Yale for me.
All right, yeah, that would be a huge get for Quinnipiac, the first Whitelaw since 2016. You know, we've been here for a while. We've seen Whitelaw finals, but we haven't seen them finish the job. And to close it out, let's just go through some other predictions for the final season awards. Let's do Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, Goalie of the Year, and First Team All ECAC. What do you got?
Player of the year. I'm gonna go Dalton Bancroft from Cornell. I have a feeling it's gonna be a really big year from Cornell and him this year. For the first team, I'm gonna say it's gonna be Mason Marsalis from Quinnipiac, Bancroft, and then Luke Hames, and then I'll go John Prokop and CJ Foley from Dartmouth, who's another guy I really like. And then in goal and for goalie of the year, I'll say it's definitely gonna be Ian Shane from Cornell. I mean, I don't think there's another goalie in the conference that sniffs his level this year.
No, yeah, Ian Shane's been performing super well ever since his freshman year, and that Dartmouth defense definitely a huge asset to that Big Green squad. Cam, thanks so much for coming on.
Of course, thanks for having me.
All right, on to the Hockey East. To the Hockey East we go in the heart of New England. We have Anthony Travalgia here from College Hockey News to go over everything we need in one of the most competitive conferences. Anthony, how you doing?
I'm well, James. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Let's jump right into it and talk about some standout players to look out for in this conference. Now, there's a lot of star power in this, especially with so many historic schools. Who would you say are the top names for fans to look for on their CVs this year?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of star power in the conference. I want to start with Maine. All the Hockey East freshman talk, last year obviously was around, Celebrini, the trio at BC, but when you look last year, Josh and Bradley Nadeau, they were outstanding last year. And obviously, Bradley signed with the Hurricanes, but Josh is still there at Maine. And, any other year last year, we're talking about the best freshman, twosome in the league. And I really think that Josh has another layer to his game. He's outstanding in all three zones, a real magician with the puck on his stick there. And I kind of have him as a sleeper for Hockey East Player of the Year. I mean, the program overall had a really good year. Last year, again, outstanding as a freshman. So big expectations, for him coming into this year. BC again, we all know what Ryan Leonard can do, what Gabe Peralt can do, but I really liked Eamon Powell's game last year on the blue line. I thought he really turned up a notch in the NCAA tournament. He had it was 38 points last year. A huge asset on their power play, one of the top power plays in the country. And I think he builds off of what he did in the NCAA tournament, last year, and really elevates his game. A couple of the players, I'm excited about, obviously, Jack Musa last year for UMass. Huge development for them coming as a freshman. 12 goals, 29 points in 37 games. 6 of those goals in the power play. Another guy really huge on the power play. And, when you look at a team that has some real offensive firepower, lost some of that firepower over the last few years, they need to hit on some of those freshmen. And Musa certainly one of them. And then, looking at UNH, Ryan Comey, he's for a big year. Really brought a lot of, promise as a freshman, last year, kind of on theme with a really good freshman class in Hockey East, last year. Comey, he led the team in goals, points, and what I like about his game is he's not afraid to shoot the puck. 120 shots last year. He puts pucks on net from all over the ice, and they seem to go in for him.
Yeah, moving from players to more teams, there are a ton of really talented teams, a lot of teams that can pull off the upset in this conference, like your UNHs. Who would you say are your dark horses to win the conference this year?
I'm going to stick with UNH, and I think they're really poised for a breakout season. And, I can see them being a tournament bubble team. We just talked about, Comey there, and Cy Leclerc, another promising forward. It's a dangerous offensive weapon. Morgan Winters was great as a sophomore, last season. So some guys who have been on this ride with UNH, and Coach Souza was rewarded there with the contract extension in March, and they're doing some renovations to the WIT, to the facility, trying to make it more of a destination in Hockey East. Obviously tough to compete with some of the other schools, not only here at Hockey East, but in the ECAC, along the East Coast. So I think the program is really in a good spot. They're in a good, they're on a good ride, trying to get back to, what UNH hockey, used to be. And I think they're going to have a breakout year this year, and they're going to surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, and on the topic of bubble teams, the Hockey East is usually a team that sends a ton to the tournament teams and also fans to add on to that. They send a ton of fans. There's usually a lot of regional games around the New England area, but how many bids do you think this conference gets this year, and who would you say your bids are for the NCAA tournament?
Yeah. I mean, they sent 4 last year, to the year prior. And I can see them going back to 4 this year. I think, BCBU, I will say that, it's tough to put a lock title on a team, in September before the puck drops, but I think, BCBU will be there again. I expect Maine to be back there, and I'm going to put UNH in as that 4th team. Certainly UMass, Providence again, bubble teams. I liked what Northeastern did last year once they got healthy. I think it was a little too late for them, but once they got healthy and found their game, they played well. But yeah, I think BCBU, Maine, and UNH are the 4 teams I'm going to put in from Hockey East.
Yeah, those teams around Boston are always super dangerous. But going over the whole conference, there are a ton of teams, a ton of talent, as we've been talking about so far. But how would you say it's going to stack up by the end of the year? What are your standings predictions?
Predictions are always tough. As much as BC lost, this year, they still have a lot of talent on that roster. I still think they're the team to beat there. BU, once again, will be right behind them. Maine, UNH coming up, 3rd and 4th there. And then I think from there, I mean, it could go anyway. I mean, there's so much parity in the league. Behind UNH as 4, I got Providence, UMass, Yukon, Northeastern. We'll go Merrimack, Vermont, Lowell. Parity's going to be there, but I think the bottom tiers, Merrimack, Vermont, Lowell is going to struggle a little bit, and they'll round out your bottom 3.
Yeah, some of those teams falling from grace from recent years, but these players are going to be rising to grace. What are your predictions for the first team All Hockey East Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, and goalie year?
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw the media poll that came out earlier in the week. The way that it came out was the way that I voted. So I had Leonard, Perot, Powell, Fowler, all from BC. Tom Willander from BU, and we talked about Josh Nadeau earlier with Maine. So yeah, the way that it played out is the way that I had it.
Then your player, goalie, and freshman of the year, who would that be?
Goalie of the year, I'm going to go with Jacob Fowler. I mean, he was so good last year, and I think that I talked to Fowler himself and a lot of the guys at BC at the Frozen Four last year about this. And when you're scoring 4.5 goals a game, it's easy to overlook the defensive aspect of your game and the goaltending. And I felt like that was such an underrated part of that BC team that was so good last year. And I think maybe they're not going to score 4.5 goals a game again this year. Maybe that gets bumped down to 4 to 3.5. And I think that's going to give, an opportunity for people to see how truly good, Jacob Fowler really is. In terms of, Rookie of the Year, just like last year, right? You had so many outstanding options, such a great freshman class. Cole Eisman, BU. I mean, obviously a big loss with Celebrini, hard to replace, but, if anybody can come in and replace, a talent like Macklin Celebrini, it's definitely going to be him. And then, for Player of the Year, I said it earlier, I think Josh Nadeau is a dark horse for it, and I'm going to stick with that gun. I really think he's going to take that next step in his development, and likely his last year at Maine, I think he's going to, sign pro after this year. So I expect a big year from him, and I think he's going to surprise some people. And I'm going to put him in as my dark horse and say he's going to be Player of the Year.
All right, yeah, I'm also a big fan of Eisenman's goal-scoring game. You can see the little Islanders flag behind me. I'm a big fan of his game and his goal-scoring. It'll certainly be exciting to follow his season.
I don't think he's going to disappoint many. So it'll be exciting to see what he does, and I'm sure he's going to have a nice, long, healthy career for the Islanders.
All right, thanks for coming on, Anthony.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
The Ice Level Podcast is sponsored by Best Damn Tape, Best Damn Tape's mission is to supply the most affordable and elite-level sports tape to athletes worldwide. You can go to bestdamntape.com and use code DanKShow40, that's DanKShow40, to get 40% off your order. Go to bestdamntape.com and order your clear tape, your black and white tape, scented stick wax, and more.
To the newly renamed Atlantic Hockey America we go with the retired voice of RIT Hockey and USCHO writer Chris Lerch. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. We're going to start out with standout players because what make the conference on a national stage a lot of times are the players. So who are your standout players to watch in the Atlantic this year?
Well, I'll give you two for starters, and then maybe talk a little bit about how Atlantic Hockey struggles with this to retain their best players. But Liam Maplinski is the preseason player of the year. I thought he was the player of the year last year, along with RET's Carter Wilkie. He's back for his senior year. He's developed his game. He was just a pure goal scorer. I think he had 21 goals and 4 assists 2 years ago. Last year, when he got more attention from other teams, he became more of a playmaker, and his assists went from 4 to 28, while he still kept his goal total high. So I agree. The coaches picked him as player of the year, and I agree completely. Another guy, Matteo Gianta from Courtesies. He was rookie of the year last year, kind of came out of nowhere. He had huge points in juniors. Was interested to see if that would translate to the college game, and it did. Coach Travalgia says the sky's the limit for Matteo. So looking forward to seeing him play a second year.
And then moving from players to teams, the Atlantic, we talked about it in Media Day today. It's a very competitive, a very tight-knit conference. Who are your dark horse teams to win the conference tournament?
I don't know if there's such a dark horse, but Holy Cross, I think, is going to be my pick. The coaches picked them third behind Sacred Heart and RIT, but I really like what Holy Cross is bringing back and how they have gotten better every year under Bill Riga. They've got the player of the year, the best forward in the conference, and they've got the preseason goalie as well, in Thomas Gale. So I think they're going to win it. Sacred Heart is the coach's pick. They have struggled at the end of the season. They haven't been able to make it out of the first round of the playoffs. And last year were really challenging RIT, and then kind of fell apart and were winless in their last 6 games. So they're the coach's pick, but they're not mine. I always like Air Force as well. They had a really rough season 2 years ago, which was very uncharacteristic. They tend to start slowly and then peak in the spring, and I expect them to do that again and be right there.
Yeah, even after losing a guy like Jack Ricketts, Holy Cross still in it. And with that conference tournament win, they would get a bid to the NCAA tournament. Do you think that would be the only bid for the conference this year, or do you think somebody comes out and rises through the pairwise to give the Atlantic its second tournament bid?
I unfortunately don't see that happening this year. I mean, the league has made great strides. They have, the full complement of 18 scholarships. They have great new facilities that have opened in the last couple of years. Their big problem is retaining players. The transfer portal has not been kind to Atlantic Hockey. You look at a team like RIT, they lost their top 4 scorers and their goalie to the transfer portal to large programs like North Dakota and Wisconsin. So with that, it's rough. It's only happened once. It happened in 2013 where Courtesies and Niagara both made the NCAA tournament. I'd love to see it happen. I just don't see it happening, especially I think next year when the 5th year goes away. Atlantic lost a lot of 5th-year players to other programs and other conferences, and that won't be happening anymore. So I think we're still a couple years away.
Didn't talk about those transfer players. I actually talked to somebody about Cody Muskoski being one of those impact transfers over this summer. So we'll see how that impacts RIT.
Yeah, with Carter Wilkie and several players there.
Yeah,
Tommy Scarponi. Yeah.
From a conference-wide standpoint, though, it's always very competitive and it's always difficult to predict. But how would you shape up your standings predictions for this year, regular season standings?
Well, I haven't fully decided that yet. My column in U.S. College Hockey will come out last week in September. As I said, I like Holy Cross to win the conference. RIT lost a lot, but They have a great freshman line that really didn't get a lot of opportunities until later in the season because they had so many great players ahead of them. Matthew Wild is on the preseason team, but Tyler Fukakusa, I think I got that right. Those guys are gonna, I think, blossom this year, and RET, I think, will be up there as well. AIC, Eric Lang always brings in, great players. They've had some significant turnover there, but I really like what they have. I think Canisius will finish higher than the coaches picked. They've got some really good young players there, and if they can get their goaltending worked out, they'll be well. I think Robert Morris I think they're gonna get better, but I think they're gonna bring up the bottom of the pack. And Army has struggled. They lost some players to the transfer portal. At Army, you get 2 years to decide if you're gonna stay and make your military commitment. And a couple really good players left for non-military programs. I think they're going to struggle, which is unfortunate because this is Brian Riley's last year. He's announced his retirement.
All right, and then your predictions for the preseason awards, those recently came out from the conference. Who would you say is going to win player, goalie, and rookie of the year, as well as first team all conference?
Well, rookies are tough. I haven't seen any of them, and just going on paper, I don't want to make a call on who the rookie of the year is going to be. I would be surprised if McClinsky wasn't in the running for player of the year. He's, unless he has a really off season, he's just been getting better and better. From that standpoint, Chris Hedden at Air Force, I think, is going to be the best defenseman in the conference. Goalies are rough. There's a couple nice goalies coming in. Atlantic to pick up a couple kids in the transfer portal that I think will make a big impact. Thomas Gale has the numbers, and there are very few returning goalies in the conference. So him and Guy Blessing from Air Force, I think, are probably the two senior guys that we're going to be talking about this season.
And then your first team all conference picks, who would that be?
Oh, should I just go with the with the coaches? I didn't have a lot of disagreement. I thought Max Godowski was a really nice choice. He was going to be on mine, and I was kind of surprised that the coaches agreed with that because he's a young player. He was a freshman last year, son of Guy Godowski, the Penn State coach. I think he's going to really make some big strides, and Army is going to need him this year. Goalie, I'm going to go with Gale. Is that everybody now? And like I said, a couple guys from RET are going to be in the running. Matthew Wild really came on at the end of the season. I expect him to be doing great things as well. And then you've got Giampa and McClinsky, and those are the four.
All right, Chris, thanks so much for coming on and helping preview the season.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
And that's all for part one of season previews. Thank you all so much for coming on. Thank you to Anthony Travalgia, Cam Levasseur, and Chris Lerch for helping me break down all these conferences. For more content, you can visit each of their Twitter pages located in the description below. As always, I'm not an expert, but I've been James Blennau, and I will see you in Conference Previews Part 2.